Right. So first thing before we go into the lecture, starting on Friday, I give a class grace period because some people add and subtract and drop, and maybe some of you, this is your first time here. So at 7:30 in the morning, I'm going to close the door. It's going to be locked. I'm going to have a nice little sign that says class is in session. Please do not disturb. Just watch today's lecture on YouTube. And it's not about you. It's about me getting distracted. So I have a plan going into class. I don't read from slides. You guys could read. You wouldn't need me if I just gave you everything to read and trust me. So I'm working. I'm reading the crowd. I'm using analogies. And when the door slams and clangs, my progress kind of, I got to start all over, and it's hard to keep my machinery running, okay? I'm going to send out a class email. And so, again, it's absolutely nothing personal. If you're running behind, it's all good. Just watch the lecture on YouTube, and we'll see you next week. If you're a few minutes behind, that's okay. And again, I don't want you jumping train tracks, trying to get here on time. It's okay if you're running behind and you're late. Just watch the YouTube video. You're not going to miss any material. But it does help me stay on pace for what my mission is at SIG. Okay? So I'll send out a class email, and we'll make that work. That being said, God, I don't believe this is, because as you guys know, like people are having conversations, and sometimes Mr. Chris comes by and stalls puts his head in and just is distracted. All right, you guys, let's do this. So, I teach with analogies. And the first analogy I want to use is a staircase analogy. And today we're going to do lecture 1. There's going to be some concepts we need to talk about. Concepts are cool because concepts aren't just memorization. It's stuff that you can use and apply and piggyback to the next concept. So in other words, lecture number 1 is like the first step on a staircase. Lecture 2 on Friday isn't just its own separate lecture. It has part of lecture 1 on it. It's a piggyback. Step number 2 has step 1 made in it. It's a foundation about which step 2 is made. 10, 3, 4, 5, and then you're at exam 1. And my interns can hopefully back me up on this. If you take it step by step, if you lay the foundation of understanding for today's stuff, for Friday's stuff, for next Wednesday's stuff, exam 1 is going to be an easy trip. However, if you don't care, don't apply, I'll put it off, procrastinate, I crammed, and all of a sudden you're making this huge leap of several steps, and that's more challenging. Okay? So I just wanted to use that analogy that there's no wasted lecture. Every lecture is a foundation. Okay? So let's go to our Visio Manus. I'm going to be referring back to these a lot. These are just kind of 10 rules that we've kind of developed over the years to kind of help me understand some tricky stuff. We don't assume. We can't assume. It doesn't mean you have to overthink. It's just that we have a process. I'll give you an example of assumptions. There's an emergency in the ER, and the papers say amputate right arm. ASAP. Left leg. Who's left? Who's right? And there's been many cases where, oops, the doctor chopped off the right from their perspective, but it meant to be the right on the patient's perspective. So that's why now, if you've ever noticed, they'll put a big red X. They don't want you, because stuff happens. Sometimes we just assume, even perspective, right? We rotate to translate. That's going to be a concept we really delve into on Friday. But our brains are locked into linear thinking. 3 miles, 4 miles, it's always in straight lines. It's never curves. It's never rotation. You're doing a squat and you're going down and you're coming up. That's how you communicate. Reach forward, reach back. Our bodies rotate. We can't just translate. If we translate bone about bone, we have a dislocation. That's a bad day. Unless you're, what was the movie, the Disney movie, Baymax? Big Hero 6, right? He could translate his hand, but once he translates his hand, got to wave goodbye to the hand. So we rotate so that we can translate certain body segments. I think Grace and I were talking about this before class, right? So if a boxer or an MMA person was going to throw a jab, you could say they translated their hand forward. But in doing so, they have to rotate their elbow and rotate their shoulder at the exact same angular velocity so that their hand can translate. And that's what I'm trying to get you guys to see, the magic, not just to look at the hand going forward, but to say what joints had to rotate in order to let the hand go forward. And they're happening at the same time, and that's confusing. We're going to teach you how to see the steps and the process. In fact, if you look at it, I always do this because it's silly. I don't mind making fun of myself. But if you do the jab in separate motions, you have two options. It's going to look two different ways. This is elbow and shoulder happening at the same time. This is elbow and shoulder happening what we call in sequence, one at a time. So watch this. I'm at the Shrimp Festival, right? Somebody's messing with me. I'm at the Shrimp Festival. So watch, one at a time. Or my favorite. Look, I did the exact same thing. Elbow extension with some horizontal shoulder adduction with some shoulder flexion. But when you do it at the same time, you don't see maybe this and this happening together. You're looking at this. You're looking at the so what. You're looking at the center of mass going up and down. You're looking at the center of mass shifting to the right and to the left. I need to teach you to look at the things that are rotating in order to get us translated. Cool? All right. Joints rotate in a plane and about an axis. That'll be a fun lecture. I'm going to teach you the link between translation and rotation with planes and axes. I'm going to teach you what it means. We're going to make sense of it. I promise you, we're going to make sense of it. Okay? But that's coming. Objects spin in planes and about an axis. In other words, if I had a basketball and I'd be spinning it like the Globetrotters, the basketball is spinning in a dimension of rotation, but it's spinning about my finger. It's rotating about. With cars, the tires spin in a plane, a dimension of rotation, but they spin about an axis, an axle. That's all it is. It's making sure we understand the difference between those two so that we can understand the concepts and those concepts don't become tricky. Okay? Also, for those of you watching on the video, I'm teaching up here with my props. We have the PowerPoints on Moodle up on the sideboard. So I'd like, if you're watching from home or at work or somewhere else, Shrimp Festival, pull up unit number 1 and I'll make sure to tell you what page we're on, context. Okay, so we're on the kinesio methods. Analyze motion joint by joint. Another one that me and the ladies talked about. Guys, human movement can be super distracting. There's a lot of stuff happening, sometimes at the same time, sometimes in sequence. And it's overwhelming. If you're looking at analyzing the motion of a picture, there's a lot of stuff happening. It's overwhelming. And what my mentor, what she taught me is we don't eat the apple in one bite. We keep it simple. The ankle can only do so many things. The subtalar joint can only do so many things. The knee can only do so many things. The hip can only do so many things. So we analyze these motions not as one collective unit. That's a movement pattern. A free throw is one movement pattern. The things that go into the free throw, the ankle can do so many things to help. The knees can only do so many things to help. The hips can only do so many things to help. And so we chop it up point by point. How did the ankles help? What did the ankles do? What did the knees do? What did the hips do? Our problem is we like to watch the ball. My football coaches know that, where if you know ball, you're watching like offensive line play. You're watching things away. Someone like me, I'm just watching the ball. Basketball the same way. You may be following where the ball's at, but experienced basketball coaches and people who love basketball are watching the picks away from the ball, movement away from the ball. I have to teach you to be better at allied health professionals. We need to not just follow the ball. We need to look away from the ball. We have to see what's happening and not what's trying to distract us, make us better. Oh, I think this is an important one, right? Position. Star this one. I'm gonna explain it. I'm gonna discuss it. Position is where are you at? Motion is where are you going? We are, true or false, we are south of I-10. I think so. But that doesn't mean we're moving south. You can be south of I-10 as a position, but be traveling north. Make sense? I mean, I could be heading to I-10. Just because my position is south doesn't mean I can't be traveling north. Just because my position is north doesn't mean I can't be traveling south. It's the same when we talk about joints in motion. My position is anatomical. My position is flexed, but I could be extending while still being flexed. I could be extended while still having flexion. Position is where are you at? Motion is where are you going? How are you traveling? Very important. And again, we're going to develop these concepts. Oh, be aware of the illusions. I hinted this last class of the illusions of motion. It looks like it's moving, but it's not. It looks like it's not moving, and it is. And then the last stuff, we'll get to it on Unit 3 when we get into muscles. All right, guys, that was page, oh, and look, I even got some encouragement for you guys, right? Thank you, Gandalf. Tips from students, that's self-explanatory. You can read that. So let's get to the crux of some of the confusions. If I asked you guys to point to the right side of class, what would you say? You'd go here? Okay. There's no right or wrong. No pun intended. The right side of class. Like all in, chips are all in, you say that side. What side do you think I might say? I might say this side. Who's right? Who's wrong? Guys, it's okay for us to both be correct as long as we give perspective. This is my right. That's your right. Perspective matters. So just as an example, I have up on the PowerPoint the superior vena cava that we learned in anatomy. But if I have the heart and I flip it upside down, does that now become the inferior? Or is it the same structure? The same structure. But so you name things based off of a certain global position, anatomical, whatever, but that doesn't mean those things can't flip. And we call that a global perspective. It doesn't mean that something on the top can't be at the bottom. But locally, to the person, that's the same structure. That superior vena cava is still on top of the heart. It doesn't matter that the heart is upside down. Does that make a little bit of sense? Okay. So there's perspectives here. That's what this is. There's global or absolute. And then there's local, relative. Your right could be different than my right. And I'm going to explain how we can make all that make sense. This is exactly why we don't want to learn joint motions with straight line concepts, with linear concepts. We don't want to use, think of it like this, we don't want to use rules for one game to play another. If I say flexion is when my hand goes forward, all right, that may work right at the beginning, but what happens if I keep flexing? Whoa, my hand's coming back all of a sudden. I want to use, if you were jogging around a track, just use your imagination. If you were jogging around the track and you were going like traditional, from your perspective, it would be counterclockwise, right? Your rotation around the track is consistent. You keep running, you keep running, you keep running. However, down here, you might be running west. And at this point, you're running north. And at this point, you're running east. And at this point, you're running south. Your linear direction of motion is going to constantly be changing, but your rotation is the same. Does that make sense? So I'm trying to plant the seed that we can't use the same rules of straight line world to rotational work. They're similar. There's certain rules that we can kind of adapt to it, but spin and shift follow two different masters. We are used to shift. We are used to linear thinking. How many of you remember Newton's laws in school? Right? Newton's law. That's all linear. Newton's laws can be applied rotationally. Resistance to change in spin. Unbalanced torques create objects with mass moment of inertia to angularly accelerate. So it's not your fault. You've never been introduced to rotational work. So look at translation versus rotation. Translation, straight line movements, up, down, left, right, front, back. Rotation is about spin. We have terms like clockwise and counterclockwise. Our joint motions that we're going to communicate is based off of spin, because it can't be based off of shift, because as I just established, shoulder goes forward until I keep rotating it, and then all of a sudden it's coming back. How many of you guys remember abduction is movement away from the midline? Yeah. It's all fun and games until you keep abducting and it's coming back to the midline. So there's going to be a test question on exam 2 where I literally am going to ask you, what's this? And some people will say bilateral shoulder adduction, because both of them came to the midline. And I'm like, that's interesting. So that means this is the same as this is the same as this. We can't use linear terms, even though it's how we want to, we're going to want to. It's so easy to say, goes to the ceiling, goes to the floor, go to that side, go to this side. That's not how the body works, okay? We have to use rotational terms, rotational concepts to talk about rotations. So we're going to use things like, all right, when the shoulder rotates like this, it doesn't matter if it's 5, 10, 15, 90, 100, 120, the spin is the same. And just like a clock has clockwise and counterclockwise, we're going to have some joints whose clock can only rotate in one dimension, clockwise and counterclockwise. But we have some joints that can rotate in another dimension, clockwise and counterclockwise. And we have some joints that can rotate in another dimension, clockwise and counterclockwise. Axis, plane of motion. And so that's where you get terms like flexions, extensions, abductions, adductions, internal, external rotations. It has nothing to do with the linearity. It has everything to do with the spin. Planting that seed. So if we were just to look at this lady doing a squat, you know, we could say things like, okay, going down, coming up. But what I'm going to teach you is there's so much more to it that we need to be able to see. Her hips in their sagittal plane, she had bilateral flexion to go from left to right. And then she's going to have bilateral extension to go right to left. Her knees, she's going to have bilateral flexion to go left to right. And then bilateral extension to go right to left. Those look like they're moving, and they were. But it didn't have anything to do with ups and downs, as I'm going to teach you. Now let's go to an illusion. Look at the shoulders. Look at the shoulder joints. And you guys know from previous classes, you know, shoulders, humerus, and the scapula, right? The glenohumeral joint. The glenoid fossa, the scapular humor. Did her shoulders move from left to right? You don't have to answer it out loud. If you want to, you can. But just give it some thought. Use this as a rep. So that on the test, you get it right. It doesn't matter if you miss a rep in practice. We want to get the rep right during the game. Okay? So the question is, did her shoulders move? I'm not asking you how they moved. I'm just wondering if you can tell definitively, did her shoulders move? And the answer is yes. Because they changed position. Her shoulders are here when she started. Now, her shoulders are here when she finishes. If she came back and moved everything except her shoulders, she'd be in this new position. It looked like it didn't move. And the reason it looked like it didn't move is because we, want to make everything relative to the room. But joints aren't relative to a room. They're relative to the bones that articulate the joints. It's not about the room. I'll give you another example. If my shoulder is at 90 degrees, my shoulder is still at 90 degrees of my shoulder. Did my shoulder abduct? No. It's in the same position. That's like saying we're at bourgeois, but we traveled east because the earth was spinning. Think about it. Are we moving right now? Well, the earth is moving, but we are not moving relative to the room. Our motion is about relative motion. So it's the same with joints. When we're looking at positions and motion of joints, it's about the bones that make up the joint, not the bone versus the room. Maybe an easier example. Let's look at my neck. If I look to the right, does that mean I move my neck? If I was in a halo, y'all know what that is, right? That prevents neck motion. Hey, Campbell. That's like gorillas. Gorillas can't move their neck. Think of it. Did my neck move? No. So we can't say when you look to the right, it's because you have right transverse cervical rotation. When you look to the left, you have to have left transverse cervical. We can't play that game. We can't assume. We have to look at it relative to the joints themselves. That's what this and this is about. Rotation versus translation. So here I have some concepts that I want to show you. Nothing but the most expensive products that I could buy. Who came from a game family, like playing board games and card games with a big card family? Tell me if you understand this analogy. Or tell me if you don't understand this analogy. I'm playing Monopoly, and I usually get the thimble, because nobody else wants the thimble. So I was like, I'll take you, thimble. You will be my piece of choice. I'm on space number 1, and I roll the dice, and it says, go forward 2 spaces. Based on the board, I'm going to move the small piece above the big piece 2 spaces, and I'm going to start my position at square 1, block 1, and my finish is going to be 3. Easy peasy. We always move the small piece above the big board. We always move the smaller door about the bigger wall. That's not how human motion works. Human motion says, not only can I move small pieces about bigger pieces, but I can move bigger pieces about smaller pieces and get to the same place. And if I get to the same place, I have to call it the same thing. Move forward. Or, from your perspective, Ken, go to the right 2 spaces. Well, Ken could go to your right 2 spaces, but what would happen if the board shifted to the left? Does that mean he went backwards? He still went forwards. This is the most important concept of the day. Ken still went to your right, even though the board shifted to your left. That's freaky, but that's truth. This is the same as this. Not because the spin is the same about the room, it's because it got me to the same place. I'm looking at my right shoulder. I'm looking at my right shoulder. How can those 2 motions not be the same? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. I'd say that's probably one of the most important concepts to plant a seed on. We're going to develop it, we're going to practice. But I wanted to lead off this class with probably the most confusing concepts. And that is right hip. I'm giving you examples. We're going to develop and master these concepts. right hip external rotation that looks like this, when I move the small piece about the big piece, when I move the door about the wall, is the exact same motion as this. But your brain is not going to like that. It's not. Because you're like, whoa, the femur spun that way. The socket spun the other way. Must be different. It's the same. Let me give you a couple of examples. Small piece moves about the big piece. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. What I'm trying to show you is that this is the exact same spin as this. It's just you never move the big piece about the faucet handle. This is always fixed. But not us. We can move the big piece about the smaller pieces. It looks different, but it's the same. A couple more examples. This is the same as this. This is the same as this. Same. We need to recondition our brains into not just assuming. We have a process. If you know where you are, and you close your eyes and you take a nap, and you wake up, and you say, where are we at? Let's say it's fall break and you're traveling to go visit family. You say, where we're at? Well, we're in Shreveport. I didn't have to physically see myself traveling north to know I had to travel north. That's what I'm going to teach you. If you know where you started and you know where you finished, you can be able to deduce how you had to move to get it. Trust the process. Trust the process. Everybody, if you're willing and able, stand up for me. We're going to do a quick example where you hopefully you can feel good. And Grace and Emma, if you don't mind, kind of walking around in case anybody. This is what I want us to do. Stand shoulder width apart. And what I want us to do is rotate our pelvis and spin it to our right. Keep your feet on the ground. Follow me. Make your pelvis look at the door, but keep your feet on the ground. And I'm giving you two options. Your right hip, either internally or externally rotated. Don't answer it right away. But would you all agree that this is one people typically miss? I need you to be able to tell me eventually, without any doubt, that you know exactly how that right hip rotated. And the answer is right hip internal rotation. And it's okay if you're like, that makes no sense whatsoever. My job is to help it make sense. If you start off, small piece moving about the big piece, put your weight on your left foot and rotate your right hip in, internal rotation, right? Notice how your toes are pointing in, right? They're not pointing out, they're pointing in. Now do the exact same. Rotate your pelvis. How are your toes pointing? In or out? In. So if we get to the same place, we have to call it the same motion. But our brains want to say, well, if this is external, this must be external. If the ball externally rotated small piece above the big piece, then when the socket does the same thing, we have to call it the same thing. And that's not how any of this works. You can be seated. That would be like saying this. Clockwise. Yes, I went from 6 to 9. That would be like saying, well, if we move the big piece about the small piece in the same clockwise direction, then this must get me to the same place. It's not how it works. This is the same relative motion as that. It gets me to the same place. We never have to worry about a clock being possessed. We never have to worry about that. Would actually be a fun clock to make, especially for Halloween. The whole clock is moving about a thing, but nobody wants to say anything. What time is it? I don't know.
8 o'clock.
This is clockwise. Guys, you got to trust me. And if you don't trust me, that's okay. My job is to get you to understand where I'm preaching. This, relative to the clock, is also clockwise. If we're going to call it clockwise, if we're going to say this motion that brought me from 6 to 9 is called clockwise motion, then this also has to be clockwise motion because it gets me to the same place. We have to. If we say this is left hip flexion, then we also have to say this is left hip flexion. It gets me to the same place. If we say this is opening the book, then we also have to say this is opening the book. Yes? It'll come, I promise. Ladies, anything y'all want to add? What in terms of joints, just giving them a heads up. I know Unit 1 is going to be sagittal, but was there any particular position motion illusion that really had to get you to think extra hard about the illusions?
For me, it was the hips.
The hips? All planes, or
Yeah.
because I know sometimes people struggle with the frontal set too.
But like the one that we just did, being able to see the small piece moving about the big piece, even though the big piece moving about the small piece, being able to separate that and your brain kind of helps. So just being able to play with that concept.
Great, same thing, hips, so you had a different.
Yeah, I feel like the kids were kind of tricky just because it was like, harder for me to visualize, but sometimes also like the trunk, like I think we did it before. We were sitting in these chairs, it's like you turn your hips to the right. But that's the same thing as
And there's a reason for that. That's natural. That's where I struggle the most. And the reason is, where are my softball players? Anybody? High school softball? Okay. I was a baseball dude, but I worked college softball and athletic training. And we didn't have a lot of players at Southern Miss. That was the transition. And so one time they're like, Brian, would you take VP? Don't swing, just be up there. And because I was their athletic trainer, I was there to help. And I was bored, so yes. And I'm getting in. And all of a sudden, Melissa Cundiff did something straight out of Harry Potter. She did this, and that ball just popped out. I don't know where it came from, out of a portal. Like Doctor Strange portal. And I was like, whoa. And as I went through my graduate studies in biomechanics, pitchers, we throw away from our bodies. There's some physics involved in that as well. Something rotating at the same angular velocity, the further you are away, the faster it's going to go linearly, tangential velocity. So we pitchers, we're used to throwing like way. This was hidden. So it's logical that wrists and elbows and shoulders are going to be more comforting to us than the stuff that's happening inside. Very logical. And even at the same joint, this is a heck of a lot easier to see than this. Okay. We have to work through that. We're going to teach you how to work through that. I'm going to teach you that we can't rely on the room. We have to rely on like bony landmarks. We have to rely on things we know that are in the body, and we have to look at those bones and those landmarks. For instance, on the cervical, I'm going to teach you chin and chest. Chin gets closer to chest, you're getting more in the fetal, that's flexion. Chin gets further away from chest. So there's going to be an illusion that we're going to do. I'm going to teach you Did my cervical vertebra move? Absolutely, because my chin got further away from my chest. It had to move, because if it didn't, I'd be looking at the ground. I'm going to teach you those illusions. I'm going to teach you how to use landmarks like chin and chest in the transverse plane. Chin's lined up with chest, or chin's lined up with sternum. I'm not rotated. Chin is to the right of sternum. I'm right transverse rotated. And that can look like this, the easy way, or it can look like this, the harder way. I'm going to teach you those landmarks. But notice, landmarks in the body are all locally referenced. My bony landmarks have nothing to do with the room, nothing to do with your environment, nothing to do with the therapy clinic, nothing to do with the park. If you're driving down the road, your car is moving relative to the road. But if you're cruise control, you don't feel like you're moving, you take a nap. Are you moving relative to the car? So all I'm trying to say is we have to do the same thing. It's not about what my car is doing on the road. It's about what's happening inside my car. Translation and rotation. So pure translation. I like to try to keep things simple. Is something going somewhere? Translation literally means, are you going up, down, left, right, front, back? So like the skateboard, which I use as a prop when I'm teaching about the ankle and subtalar joint. But we can look at the center of mass. We know what that is, center of gravity, center of mass. It's basically the point about where all the stuff is equally distributed, side to side, front, back, up. So we could say like the skateboard is translating in the negative X, positive X, or this side of the room, that side of the room, east, west, insert linear term here. The wheels, however, when I lift it up off the ground and I do this, this is what we call pure rotation. Meaning, is it moving? Yeah. But is it going anywhere? No. So think about a merry-go-round. If kids are playing on a merry-go-round, is it moving? Maybe. But is it going anywhere? There's no translation to the center of mass of the merry-go-round. If the merry-go-round is rotating and going somewhere, probably the same spirit that got into the clock got into the merry-go-round. I want to meet that spirit. Guys, there's a difference. Pure rotation, the center of mass is staying still, but there's still movement. There's still angular movement. This is pure translation. Those two things can combine what we call general motion. This will be the last concept that I talk about today. Then we'll go around and answer questions. Or I love to let class out a few minutes early, because some students who get it, or you got to go, and some students who have questions, they're like, I just don't feel comfortable asking them in class. Hey, let's talk. The most important concept of the day I'm going to say for last. General motion. You have translation. You're going somewhere, up, down, left, right, front, back, or a combination. And you have pure rotation. You're spinning, but you're not going anywhere. So what is the combination of those two? What is the peanut butter and jelly of those two? Analogy being translation is the peanut butter and rotation is the jelly. The convergence of those two things, guys, is this. We rotate to translate. Think about it. If I were able to translate my whole body, if I was able to shift every part of my body, I would be a wizard. You're a wizard, Harry. Or I would need the force. We have to rotate things in order to translate things. I can't just translate myself. What if you jump off of the chair? Get up on the chair. I'm not saying other things can't translate you. I'm in an elevator. The elevator is translating me. I'm saying we have to use rotations in order for us to get some translations. The skateboard is only fun when the wheels are not only spinning, but they're going somewhere. That's all I'm trying to say. The skateboard is fun. Now, the wheels in this instance have general motion, a combination, because not only are they spinning, but they're also translating. They're rotating to translate. Our wheels are our ankles. But unlike the wheel of the skateboard that can perpetually spin in the same direction over and over, we only have so much motion we can do before we have to roll our wheel, lift it back up, reposition our wheels. Yeah. It's the same concept. We rotate in order to translate. 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 Problem is making sure we give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, as Dr. George used to say. We have to not let the translation parts of these things get in the way of the rotational movements of which these things are named. Does that make sense? It's not about going up, down, left, right, front, back. It's about how are those joints, the bones that make up those joints, spinning relative to each other. Because as I just established, I can have shoulder flexion and my hand is moving away, but if I keep flexing, whoa, it's coming back. That doesn't change the motion. That would be like saying clockwise is from 6 to 9, but as soon as it comes back, it's counterclockwise from 9 to 12. No, it's still spinning the same. Yes? Just because I want to offer, I have to make the ask. Do we have any questions or clarifications as a group? Remember, I'm not expecting you to be right here. Contrary, mon frère. I just want you to be here, introducing you to some of these concepts, and we're going to develop them, and we're going to add, just like you're getting ready for week 1 of whatever season you're playing. You're going to install certain things and practice those things, and install new plays, and install new questions. Yes, sir.
I want to make sure I wrote it down right.
Outstanding.
You said it's about how the bones and joints move about one another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me give you a practical, I'm so glad you asked that. What I'm trying to get at is, let's say we have our patella and our tibial tuberosity. So flexion, I'm going to teach you what that means. I'm literally going to teach you what flexion truly means. Flexion could look like this, but flexion can also look like this. Why? Because you get to the same place. That's all it is. So we can't say flexion is when the heel goes up, because I could have flexion and the heel doesn't move at all. So that's why we have to make it relative to the bones that make up the joint, not relative to a bone in a reed. That would be like saying book opens when page goes here, but what happens if I do this? Didn't this book cover do the exact same thing? But I didn't open the book. Because it's not about the cover moving about the reading. It's about the cover moving about the pages. This is not the same as this. But this is the same as this. Good? Great question. Thank you for asking. And remember, I'm recording every lecture, uploading it to our Moodle page. So if you're like, oh, I wasn't quite sure if he said right or left, just go back and it'll clarify. And if I had a dyslexic moment and I said right when I should have said left, call it to my attention, I'll correct it. Okay? I got you. Have a good day. Great question.